Hello, I'm Jared Goyette, and welcome to Wrap Up Weekly, where we report on the most important news that happened over the past week. In this episode, you'll see The Lion Awakens, Israel's operation against Iran and what it means for Ukraine. Military factories are burning all over Russia. What exactly did the Ukrainian Armed Forces hit? Russia hits 1 million casualties in its war against Ukraine. What will make Putin stop? First, this week's big story. Israel's strike on Iran's military leadership and nuclear program blindsided nearly everyone. Damage estimates are still guesswork, but the hit list is clear and frankly astonishing. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, lost its aerospace chief, its chief of staff, and its top commander. And Iran's nuclear program, which Tehran has used to threaten Israel and the United States, also took a big hit. 2 of its lead scientists were killed.
Well, an attack on Iran was inevitable. Inevitable. I mean, Israel has attacked Iran already, I think this year, seriously, at least once. And the problem is Iran is clearly set on making a nuclear weapon and is doing so, and has stated quite clearly time and time again that the aim of that nuclear weapon is to wipe Israel off the map. So Israel really has no choice but might say to fight back, because, of course, Iran may not be fighting Israel face to face, but it does support any country that is actually attacking, country or group that is attacking Israel. So Iran and Israel are effectively at war.
Early reports suggest that Israel first knocked out Iran's air defenses in the western part of the country. Here, Mossad appears to have borrowed from Ukraine's spiderweb playbook. They slipped missiles and attack drones into Iran ahead of time, rolled them to launch sites the day before, and took out SAM batteries at point-blank range. Then followed up with cruise missiles fired from aircraft. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already cautioned that the operation won't be over quickly.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000 of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped.
And Iran's response? The first salvo, hundreds of attack drones fired towards Israel, failed. Reuters reports most were shot down over Jordan airspace. Iran then followed up with a missile attack. Again, most were intercepted, though not all. Israel's ambulance service reported that 34 people were injured on Friday night in the Tel Aviv area. Police later said that 1 person had died, while another 2 people were confirmed killed in a direct hit on central Israel Saturday morning. Inside Iran, the streets are restless. Thousands turned out in big cities, demanding a tougher response. Analysts warn that the leadership's hesitation could spark revolt, even among its loyal base. Why does this matter to everyone in Ukraine? Simple. Iran is one of Russia's 2 most important allies, the other being North Korea, and the partnership is more than just diplomatic formalities. Tehran ships Moscow thousands of Shahed attack drones, the same UAVs that pound Ukrainian cities week after week. It's true that Russia now assembles many of those in-house, but the Iranian pipeline still flows. Iran has also sent Russia hundreds of thousands of mortar rounds, while Moscow returns the favor by helping Tehran inch closer to a nuclear weapon, a project Iran insists that it doesn't need, yet keeps pursuing.
We've got some sort of agreement with Russia that is probably about giving them the nuclear weapon, nuclear technology from Russia, in exchange for thousands and thousands of drones and missiles. So, I mean, when you have a pact with the devil, It doesn't make sense if that pact is actually giving you what you want, because this is exactly what Iran has done. I mean, it's made a pact with the Russian devil. You give me nuclear power, nuclear weapon technology, and we will give you all the stuff you need to fight the war. So there's no sense in them stopping any relationship with Russia until they have that weapon. And in fact, if they stop the relationship with Russia, I would worry from that day on that they've got the weapon. Remembering they also need somewhere to test it, and I don't think they're going to test it in Iran, because although it looks like a nice big sort of empty place, it's actually quite well populated, with a considerable increase in population year on year. So it's not a spot for. It's not got big empty spots like somewhere in the Stans or in Siberia where you can test a weapon.
Now, on to Russia's war in Ukraine. This week brought some important developments. Ukraine's new unmanned system force hit the Russian Radio Engineering Research Institute, Progress, in Cheboksary. At least 2 drones struck the plant, touching off a major fire, according to Ukraine's general staff. Why does that matter? Progress builds Kometa adaptive antennas, gear that steers Shahed drones, glide bombs, and other precision weapons that Russia uses against Ukraine.
Industrial complex facility where antennas for Shaheds were manufactured was hit as part of the efforts to reduce the enemy's ability to manufacture air attack weapons. On the night of June 9th, units of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Unmanned Systems Forces, in cooperation with other components of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, struck the facilities of GSC Vinir Progress, LLC ABS Electra, in the city of Cheboksary in the Chuvash Republic, Russian Federation. From a publication of the Ukrainian Stratcom on Telegram.
Overnight in Tatarstan, the air raid sirens droned for 6 hours. By dawn, Kazan's social feed were filled with videos of a big fire. Locals posted images of thick black smoke rising near weapons depots and claimed that the Kazan state gunpowder plant had been hit. Residents said that something keeps exploding. Now, on to a different city with the same theme. Ukrainian drones struck the gunpowder works in Kotovsk again. That plant makes explosives and propellant for everything from rifle rounds to mortar shells. Ukraine's unmanned system force has hit it before, and according to Kyiv, these strikes on Russian arms factories will keep coming.
The Security Service of Ukraine strikes and will continue to strike the enemy even where they believe themselves to be untouchable. We are working to surprise them with new operations just as painful as Operation Spiderweb. In full accordance with the laws and customs of war, we targeted entirely legitimate military objectives, air bases and aircraft used to bomb our peaceful cities. What we are doing is real demilitarization of the Russian Federation. Vasyl Maluk, Lieutenant General, Head of the Security Service of Ukraine.
Moscow's reply, as usual, to hammer civilians. Just after midnight on June 10th, Russia launched a mixed barrage, 322 drones, missiles, and glide bombs, most of them aimed at Kyiv, here. Air defenses knocked out 220 and jammed 64, but debris still hit 7 of the capital's 10 districts, setting homes, cars, and warehouses on fire.
Always is betting on the quantity of drones and plans to continue the war for as long as it is allowed to, while simultaneously trying to justify its terror against Ukraine's civilian population by blaming Western mistakes, NATO expansion, and that Russia isn't being heard. Moscow plans to circumvent sanctions by imitating diplomacy. Andriy Kovalenko, head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation.
Meanwhile, things are still going badly for the Russians at the front in terms of losses. Ukraine's general staff now puts Russian dead and seriously wounded at 1 million. That's 1 million soldiers and officers killed or crippled in Russia's push to grab Ukraine. Nikita Skoblikov breaks down how the Kremlin keeps sacrificing its own people.
In the full-scale war against Ukraine, Russia has lost over 1 million soldiers, killed and wounded, according to the General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces. In its 34 years of existence, the Russian Federation has participated in several armed conflicts, but none have seen losses on this scale. Transnistria, both Chechen campaigns, and the war with Georgia are incomparable to the casualties in the war against Ukraine. 1 million exceeds the entire regular Russian army's strength before the full-scale invasion. According to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, in 2022, it numbered about 900,000 personnel.
The Russian Federation, unfortunately, employs tactics from World War II, known as Zhukovshchina, or what the Russians themselves call, "We won't spare any cost, women will bear more." The aggressor country's total mobilization reserve is around 20 million, so claiming that Russian command values the lives of its servicemen is completely contrary to the nature of their combat operations, namely the tactics of meat grinder assaults or banzai attacks.
Over 3 years of war against Ukraine, Russia has lost thousands of elite servicemen. According to the BBC, this includes Main Intelligence Directorate Special Forces, airborne troops, Special Operations Forces, pilots, and Marines, units that form the Army's core. Their training took years and millions of dollars. The BBC estimates that the 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet alone lost about 2,500 personnel, roughly 80% of its strength. Russia has lost at least 10 generals and over 500 lieutenant colonels and colonels. Analysts believe that without elite units and its officer backbone, the Russian army has significantly lost manageability and combat coordination.
There's plenty of cannon fodder. Combat-capable units are virtually gone. The latest glaring example is the deployment of an FSB regiment to the Kramatorsk front. That was a bold line under the combat capability of the Russian Federation's armed forces.
To replace the army's elite, the Kremlin has had to rely on hundreds of thousands of civilians and convicts promised freedom for fighting. According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, mass recruitment of prisoners reduced Russia's prison population to a historic low of about 350,000 in 2024. The agency estimates that 140,000 to 180,000 convicts are participating in combat operations.
Идет рекрутинг, я бы это так назвал, в...
Recruitment is happening at various levels in places of detention. Not only in colonies and prisons, but also when a person becomes an accused during investigations, when they realize they've committed a crime, and they're told, go to the front, you'll be free, but you must fight. This especially applies to criminals facing serious sentences.
Despite Putin's claims that Russia doesn't need foreign mercenaries, its army clearly lacks sufficient forces. The Kremlin is thus involving North Korean soldiers and mercenaries from other countries. According to important stories, over 1,500 foreigners may have been recruited in Moscow alone in a year. Recruitment centers are scattered across Russia, their exact number impossible to determine. Foreign citizens are offered jobs in Russia, then sent to military camps from which escape is impossible. According to Chinese prisoners of war, these camps lack electricity and water, provide food once a day, offer no translators, and all documentation and orders are in Russian.
In that place, besides me, there were about 20 others who came to register, all of different nationalities, likely from Central Asia, Kazakhstan, other countries. Only an approximation. There were also people from Ghana, Arabic-speaking individuals, and probably from Iraq.
Such recruitment methods cannot enhance the armed forces' combat capability. The number of wounded in the Russian army is so high that they are denied hospitalization and sent to assault Ukrainian positions.
I asked guys on the street. Here are guys standing with crutches, with canes, including me. Faces are barely visible, of course. We're going to fight the enemy. With Category D, they send everyone. Legless, armless, on crutches, blind, disabled. It's annihilation, simply, of us. They've arranged a genocide.
The 3 days Russia planned to capture Ukraine have stretched into over 3 years. During this time, the Kremlin has lost a significant portion of its armaments. According to Ukraine's General Staff, nearly 11,000 tanks, over 22,000 artillery systems, and more than 51,000 vehicles have been destroyed. Losses have forced the Kremlin to empty warehouses in Siberia, per the UK Ministry of Defense. However, much of this equipment is in poor condition due to inadequate maintenance. Even this equipment is running out. Previously, there were mortars, towed artillery, self-propelled artillery, tanks, now mostly military trucks. Soldiers often have to procure their own weapons.
Сейчас российская армия во многом существует.
The Russian army now largely operates on self-sufficiency. Contract soldiers are paid large sums, which they spend on themselves, including buying transport, and they make do with a small amount of armored vehicles on the front. When recruits are enlisted, they're distributed across the front, joining existing units with some equipment, where they settle in, assimilate, and replenish those units.
The Russian Navy has also suffered significant losses. Ukraine's defense forces, leveraging new technologies and unmanned systems, have destroyed or damaged about a third of the Black Sea Fleet's ships, including the flagship Moskva, landing ships Saratov, Minsk, and Caesar Kunikov, missile ships Ivanovets and Askold, and the submarine Rostov-on-Don. Ukraine has achieved even more impressive results against Russia's air fleet. Per the General Staff, 337 helicopters and 416 aircraft have been destroyed. Ukraine's security service conducted an operation called Spiderweb, targeting 41 Russian strategic aviation aircraft at several airfields. The approximate cost of the destroyed aircraft is about $7 billion. The American outlet Clash Report calls the SBU operation unprecedented in cost effectiveness.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
In terms of cost effectiveness, Ukraine's June 1st, 2025 sabotage operation has few equals. A single FPV drone used by Ukraine can cost as little as $300 to $600. In contrast, a modernized Russian Tu-95MS strategic bomber is valued at $100 million plus. This is over 100,000x cost gap from a publication by Clash Report on X.
Recognizing the effectiveness of unmanned systems on the battlefield, Ukraine is scaling up this direction. This approach preserves soldiers' lives, efficiently destroys costly enemy equipment and personnel, and delivers precise strikes on military targets in Russia. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, in 2024, the ministry, together with the State Special Communications Service, procured over 1.5 million drones. In 2025, this figure is planned to increase to 4.5 million units, reported by Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.
And the peace negotiations? Kyiv says real talks can only begin after the shooting and attacks stop. Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha doubts that there's any point in meeting again until Moscow proves that that's something it can do.
We need such negotiations, where decisions are made, where issues are resolved. Now we see that the last round of meetings, which took place in Istanbul, was actually reduced to discussing the exchange. Therefore, we are interested in a meeting at the level of presidents, and we are ready for such a meeting. We will continue to watch. The most important thing for us is that we bring peace closer, a ceasefire. Ukraine has demonstrated that it has never been and will not be an obstacle to achieving peace. We are committed to peaceful efforts. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
The Ukrainian team's visit to Washington focused on three things: bolstering defenses, bringing home children abducted by Russia, and tightening sanctions on Moscow. They also briefed 23 senators from both parties, laying out the frontline picture, listing urgent military needs, and pitching joint defense industry projects with the US. My colleagues have the details.
Russia is not preparing for peace, but for continued aggression. Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Defense Serhiy Boyev and Deputy Head of the President's Office Pavlo Palisa briefed US senators on the Kremlin's true intentions. The Ukrainian delegation shared key intelligence information and urged continued vigilance and resolve in supporting Ukraine.
Russia purchases machinery components for use and ammunition materials from China. In return, Russia sells China advanced military aircraft. aircraft, hundreds of aircraft engines, and armored vehicles. The same goes for Iran and North Korea. Moscow sends dozens of aircraft, helicopters, and advanced missile technology to Iran, and Pyongyang provides Russia with millions of artillery rounds, delivery systems, drones, and ballistic missiles. The weapons that Russia and its allies produce today are directed against Ukrainians. However, tomorrow, these weapons may make their way to other parts of the world and be used against soldiers from the U.S. or from one of the militaries of all partners.
According to Pavlo Palisa, the key is to strike at the source of Russia's war machine, that is, to impose even tougher sanctions. Palisa highlighted that the SBU's spiderweb operation marked a new level of warfare effectiveness, disabling 41 Russian aircraft in just 1 hour. Ukraine's top priority remains air defense.
Our first priority is air defense systems and the ammunition and rockets for air defense. First of all, to protect our territory, our cities, and our objects of critical infrastructure from the sky. And of course, we still need to keep our platforms, those we receive from our partners, operational. So we need some parts to maintain them, and of course, artillery rounds.
Presidential sanctions advisor Vladislav Vlasiuk stated that despite sanctions on Russia's energy sector, it earned nearly $600 billion from oil exports between 2022 and 2024. Using the financial sector, including banks and cryptocurrencies, Russia continues to circumvent restrictions and source foreign components for its weapons. The Ukrainian side emphasized again, Putin is deceiving the world, buying time, manipulating the situation to avoid American sanctions. The Kremlin has no intention of stopping the bloodshed. Head of the President's office, Andriy Yermak, briefed senators on the ongoing negotiations for a just and lasting peace. He emphasized that Ukraine did not start this war, but seeks to end it. Meanwhile, Russia is doing everything to prolong the conflict, using negotiations as a tool for further aggression. The stance of the Russian delegation at the talks is clear evidence of that.
We are continue to fight. We are able to achieve just and lasting peace. We account very much for continuous support of our partners, first of all, of United States. And I think the end of this war, the just and lasting peace, it's very important, not just for Ukraine, because we defend not just our freedom and independence, we defend Europe. We defend the free world on our continent. And this is very important to not lose, after more than 3 years, the faith that Ukraine is able to win this war.
According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the demands Russia outlined in its memorandum are ultimatums and cannot be accepted. He added that a ceasefire could be followed by a meeting between the two leaders, possibly with US mediation.
Why ceasefire before the leaders' meeting? Because if we meet and there's no understanding, no desire for de-escalation or vision for how to end this, the ceasefire will collapse that same day. But if we see that dialogue is possible and that there's readiness to take real steps toward de-escalation, then the ceasefire can hold.
In Zelensky's view, only increased sanctions pressure can force the aggressor to the negotiating table. US Special Envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, announced that a new sanctions package against Russia has already been prepared. The legislation, initiated by Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, proposes a 500% tariff on imports from countries that continue buying Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other goods. Reported by Victoria Smirnova, UATV News.
German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius visited Kyiv for talks with President Zelensky. Top of the agenda? Bolstering Ukraine's air defenses and co-developing long-range weapons. Pistorius also pledged a significant boost in Germany's military aid.
In the planning stage, this has not yet been definitively decided, but there is the prospect of an additional amount of 1.9 billion euros. This will be available in the coming weeks and months once the decision is made in Parliament. Part of it will be used to finance the Long-Range Fires project. This means Germany will provide around 9 billion euros this year to support Ukraine.
The EU is gearing up for a fight over its 18th Russian sanctions package, one of the toughest since the full-scale invasion, the Financial Times reports. To pass it, all 27 member states have to agree, but Slovakia and Hungary say they'll vote no. Both still rely on Russian energy and keep friendly ties with Moscow. Brussels has tangled with Budapest and Bratislava before, But the real unknown is where the EU's key ally, the United States, will land. Andriy Yermoshenko looks at where the Commission hopes to pack its 18th sanctioned package against Russia.
The European Commission has presented its 18th package of sanctions against Russia. These measures are intended to weaken the Kremlin's ability to continue its war against Ukraine. A key focus is the financial sector of the aggressor state. Brussels plans not only to disconnect 22 Russian banks from the international payment system SWIFT, but also to ban all financial transactions with them. Institutions that collaborate with already sanctioned banks may also come under new restrictions.
We also propose to extend the transaction ban to financial operators in third countries that finance trade to Russia in circumvention of sanctions. And we also propose to sanction the Russian Direct Investment Fund, its subsidiaries and its investment projects. In this way, an important channel for financing projects to modernize the Russian economy and strengthen its industrial base will be strictly limited.
Experts say these sanctions could seriously impact Russia's banking sector, especially its ability to bypass existing restrictions. So far, many Russian banks, even those under sanctions, have still been able to access international payment systems.
Major operators in Russia's financial market, take Sberbank, for instance, even though disconnected from SWIFT, still allowed their clients to make international transactions via accounts in the other 22 Russian banks. So, if this new decision is adopted by consensus within the EU, it will mark a significant increase in pressure on the Russian financial sector.
The EU has also turned its focus to the Kremlin's main source of income, energy exports. The European Commission proposes a ban on all transactions related to both pipelines of Nord Stream, ensuring they can't be revived in the future, even if political conditions change. Brussels also wants to add 77 vessels from Russia's so-called shadow fleet to the sanctions list, ban the import of products refined from Russian crude, and lower the price cap on Russian oil from $60 to $45 per barrel. These steps are working, no matter how much the Kremlin wants to pretend otherwise, said the EU's top diplomat.
The Russians have all the time in the world. They can, keep this war forever, which is not true, which is not simply true. The oil exports via Black Sea and Baltic Sea decreased by 30% in 1 week. So showing that it actually has an impact. And what the intelligence tells is that now the sanctions will hit more the supply chains, transaction ban and much stronger steps.
Kiev is urging partners to go even further, calling for the oil price cap to be lowered to $30 per barrel. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says only decisive measures can push the aggressor toward peace.
Every partner knows the right price cap, $30, no higher. That level would apply real pressure on Russia. They need to be forced to seek peace because they don't respond to anything else. I know partners are discussing a compromise price, but we've had enough compromises with Russia. Each one only delays peace. We're asking to genuinely lower the price of Russian oil to genuinely bring the war's end closer.
The proposal to lower the oil price cap will be discussed at the next G7 summit to be held in Canada. The White House's position on the issue remains unclear. However, even if the United States does not support the new price limit within the G7 format, the European Union has its own tools to enforce the restriction, assured EU High Representative Kaja Kallas. Reported by Andriy Dmytrenko, UATV News.
Well, that's it for us this week at Wrap Up Weekly. I've been your host, Jared Goyette. I noticed last week a commentator said that my paunch keeps me relatable. Well, I plan to stay relatable for you and for Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.